Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Australian Reptile Park's live stream. Today what we're going to do is to try and get Elvis, our adult saltwater crocodile, to death roll. Now, we had a go last week, didn't work out the way we planned. We're going to have another bash today. Now, of course, I'm not alone here. I've got a few trusty assistants. We've got the fabulous zookeeper Dan, fabulously handsome. We've got Jake, incredibly tall. We've got Zach, who's incredible in his own way. And of course, I'm Ranger Mick, and I am incredibly old. But today what we're going to do is to play with Elvis. Now, for those of you who've been to the park in the past, you already know Elvis is around about 4.5 metres in length. He weighs about 450 kilos, as close as we can tell. He's a little bit reluctant to step on the scales for us. Now, what we do know is that he is the most magnificent specimen that you'll ever see. I've been working with crocodiles for more than 30 years, and well and truly, this is the most spectacular animal. Most this size, you've got a leg off, part of the jaw missing, end of the tail gone. He's in absolutely mint condition. And he is your genuine sociopath, and I'm really not kidding. This animal is incredibly dangerous. You do not get a second chance. If he grabs you, he will kill you. Now, we've got some zones of death, if you like. A semicircle from the tip of his snout to his outstretched front leg. If you're in that position, it's not survivable at all. If you're in the semicircle from the tip of his snout to his back leg, you've got about a 5% chance of survival. Your chances of walking away uninjured, absolutely zero. Now, what he's doing is anticipating that we're going to feed him. He's going to come around this side. I'm going to get one of the boys to sort of encourage him back. We're going to give him a piece of food over here. That should put him into food mode. And then when he comes around the other side again, we're going to throw a substantial sized piece of meat. Now, we've got part of a cow, leg off a cow today. If we're lucky, we hear a great big crunch. If we're even luckier, he rolls over several times for us. Now, the death roll is, of course, incredibly famous, and it serves two purposes at the same time. It allows the animal to actually dislocate a large piece of flesh, and it's also a pretty good way to avoid being attacked by another crocodile. If you're spinning around and around and around, very hard for another animal to get a grip on you. If it's very lucky, it might manage to grab one of your legs, but it may not kill you. Now, I keep looking away from the camera because here at the Reptile Park, it's always safety third. And I'm quite serious. The rule is have fun, get the job done, do it safely. Now, Dan's bringing him around the other side. Now, a little bit of history about this animal. We've had him here at the park for about 11 years, and in all that time, he's actually become more dangerous rather than less. He's very, very confident. They're very astute observers of their environment. So he knows all of the staff. He knows our weaknesses. He knows if you've got a cold. He knows if you've got a crook leg, all that sort of stuff. He observes everything. And that's one of the big problems with an animal like this. Complacency in the staff. You think, oh, I know all about him, I've seen everything he can do. This animal can surprise you, I kid you not. Now, Dan's bringing him around the corner. Jake's kindly handed me a lamb chop, believe it or not. Now, what I'm going to do is bring him around. I'm going to guide him in a little bit by tapping the water a few times. He's got these brilliant physical senses up and down the body. He knows exactly where an animal is. Even when a smallish thing like a wallaby sticks its face into the water to drink, he can detect those vibrations. Alrighty, now he's having a bit of a look around. He hasn't seen me for a few weeks, so I'm hoping he's going to come right up to the edge. And if we're very, very lucky, he might even give us a bit of a jaw slap, and that's where he whacks the choppers together. Now, he's had a bit of a look. You're going to come a little bit further, mister. Come on. You're going to come? Come on, mate. That's it, come. You're going to come? All right. Now, you might think that nothing's going to happen. And oddly enough, it appears that nothing's going to happen. You're going to come a little bit closer, mate. Come on, let's go. Look at that. Look, it's a lovely lamb chop. Look at that. You're going to have a go. I swear that this animal knows that this is a live stream, and he's electing to misbehave. Alrighty, well that was probably the least spectacular crocodile feed in my 28 years here at the Reptile Park. Now what we will do, however, is see whether we can up the ante a little bit. We're going to move him around. Come on, El, you follow me. Come on, mate, this way. Come on, come on, come on. Back you come. Back you come. Righto, now he's reversing into the water, and what we'll do, we'll encourage him to come around the edge, and then the boys have got a bit of a surprise for him. Righto, come on mate, come on, come on, come on. Finally, there we go. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking at home, why don't you just make him do what you want him to do? With an animal like this, you can't really make him do anything. We can certainly manipulate his behaviour a little bit, but at the end of the day, an animal like this makes its own decisions. It really is. It's not like a dog where you can really condition him to behave. Very, very different with this species. All right, now he's halfway through what we call the moat, and that's a little skinny bit there. Now, around here on this side, if you've never been here before, the pond is much, much deeper on this side, and that allows him to move around. He can jump up out of the water there, and if we're lucky, he'll have a bit of a spin for us. Now, Zach, who's doing the heavy lifting work, is behind the camera at the moment, and what he's got is that very large leg. Now, as he comes around, we'll sling that to him. All right, now I do think he's interested. He quite often comes across the top of the water when he's really interested in something well underneath it, and he's really using stealth. Now Dan is sending a few vibrations to the edge of the pond. And what we'll do, we'll toss it in a couple of times. Righto, he's creaking forward. Going to come. Oh, he's right on the edge. Right. Oh, did you hear that crack? Okay. Now this animal weighs 450 kilos, I should say. And when he really turns it on, he can literally tear the rope out of your hands. So my guys have got to be really careful the way they hold that rope, because you can get a terrible rope burn. All right. Now, in the real world, when he's grabbed something like this, the animal resists, and lots of this sort of stuff. And traditionally what they do is to actually hold a large animal down under the water and wait for it to drown. Minimal expenditure of energy and minimal risk for the crocodile. Now, in the real world, several hours after the kill is when the big death roll occurs. Now, this bloke's been working with us for around about 10 or 11 years, and he certainly knows the deal. So, if we're lucky, he'll get to have a go around. Now, this is also a really good training exercise for the staff here at the Reptile Park. For those youngsters who sort of think, oh, you get bitten by the croc. No, if he grabs you, it's exactly like this. He will not let go. He really, really won't. His real area of strength is that sideways lunge. He uses the tail to brace himself and then whips sideways. Now, he does look as if he's thinking about going over.
He's thinking about it.
Now, when his head tilts to the side like that, that's him having a bit of a think about whether he's going to roll over several times.
Thinking about it.
He is indeed, yep. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Oh, no.
Oh.
No, he almost went, didn't he?
You got us there. Exactly, we might need you too. He's thinking about it. You guys.
This is, of course, incredibly enriching for the crocodile. For those of you at home, you might imagine lying around a swimming pool all day could be fairly dull, and you don't get to exhibit any wild behaviour. So here at the Reptile Park, enrichment for all our animals is one of our biggest priorities. And this really is reminiscent of his wild days. This animal started out life in the wild. He wasn't caught to be put on display here at the Reptile Park. He was recovered from the wild because he'd become a nuisance or a rogue crocodile. Now, that doesn't mean you've killed anybody, but it means that you're starting to intimidate people and you're coming pretty close. In Darwin Harbour, the policy is above 3 metres, they're removed, and this character was well in excess of 3 metres when he was removed from Darwin Harbour. Now, we brought him down here at the Reptile Park to live a life of luxury for the rest of his days. All right, now, that was about 250 kilos of human pull there, and as you can see, made very little impact on the physical position of the crocodile.
Yeah. So with Elvis taking breaks like this, it's obvious that he's using massive amounts of force in his own body.
That's exactly right. These animals build up lactic acid very, very quickly. It's very hard for them to diffuse it. So short bursts of very intense activity and then lots of periods of lying around in between. Now, we should never forget that a crocodile this size really only needs to eat about once every month or so. And over the course of the year, he only eats about 200 kilos of food. Now, if environmental conditions in the wild were such that he couldn't feed for 12 months, he certainly wouldn't die. In fact, an animal this size would probably lose about 50 or 60 kilos in weight in a 12-month period. They are absolutely extraordinary. They've got all of these little tricks for surviving in very, very harsh conditions. They can recycle their urine, their oxygen requirements are minimal, their water requirements are minimal, and they can literally just shut down on the edge of the riverbank for several weeks or even months if necessary. Now, one of the things that we love about this creature is the size of his teeth. Now, all the boys who are here today have been madly collecting crocodile teeth for many, many years, and all of us say the same thing. This animal's teeth are nearly twice the diameter of any other croc that we've ever seen, and that really is extraordinary. When we first brought this bloke down, that was the most startling thing, was the size of his teeth. All right, now he's backed off into the deeper water a little bit, and if we're lucky, he might decide to have a bit of a go. It's a bit of tug-of-war, to and from, and to a certain extent, he's kind of playing. I think in the back of his head, he knows he's going to get a piece of this, so he's not really putting in this huge effort that we were hoping for.
So what's their diet like out in the wild?
The smaller crocodilians tend to prey mostly on crustaceans. When we do gut studies in crocs up to about 2.5 metres long, they primarily eat mud crabs, strangely enough, and a lot of fish. And then once they hit about 3.5 metres in length, there's not enough energy in the fish. They expend more catching it than they actually gain by eating it. So they move to medium-sized mammals. So wallabies, kangaroos, and more recently, of course, horses, camels, water buffalo, donkeys, all the introduced things, and a lot of cattle up in the top end. And I might add that if they make a big kill like that, they're not coming back the next day to feed again. When they make a big kill, eat as much as he can. For this animal, that's about 30 kilos, and then he won't require any food for several weeks. Now, he might hang around in proximity to the carcass and guard it, but he's not going to be feeding every day. That's a bit of a myth that crocs eat every day.
So what's likely to happen with this piece of meat? Do you think that he's going to take it? Do you think, from your experience with Elvis?
Look, I think he's going to hang on to it. What we normally see, if he's going to do the thrashing around, he'll do it pretty quickly. This is fairly standardised behaviour. He'll like to hang on to that for quite some time. And what we'll do, we'll have a couple of boys in here keeping an eye on him. We don't want him to take the rope and all that sort of stuff. So a little bit later on, what we'll probably do is take the rope off it. We might even give him that bit, and if we're lucky, he'll crunch it, and we might even be able to retrieve a little bit of it. One of the problems, of course, if we overfeed him, then that's it, no action for several weeks, and we like to keep him fit and healthy by moving around, and part of the way to do that is to manage his weight very, very carefully. Now, we give him the same volume of food that he would eat in the wild, roughly 200 kilos. But of course, rather than 10 or 12 feeds a year, we feed him 200 times here at the Reptile Park. So each week we give him roughly a kilo in front of the crowd. This, of course, we haven't got a crowd. We don't have to feed him every week. So this is really a bit of training for the staff, a bit of enrichment for the crocodile, and at the end of the day, very, very good fun.
You were talking about his teeth before and how the boys collect them. Do they grow their teeth back?
Yes, they do. They've got about 72 teeth in a full set. Most crocs don't have all the teeth at any one time. And they shed those teeth. Each tooth is replaced. Over the course of his nearly 100-year life, he will probably shed about 2,000 teeth. Now, on an animal this size, those great big eye teeth, and they're the ones you want to collect, he will shed those roughly every 18 months to 2 years. And here at the Reptile Park, it's always a bit of a contest to see who gets those teeth.
Who do you reckon's getting more tired, Dan or Elvis?
I thought you were going to say who has the most teeth, and that would be me. Now, who's getting tighter?
Dan or Elvis? Dan's got no skin on the palm of his hands. That's going to be very, very painful, Dan. And Dan's got a lot of work to do this arvo, so there'll be no betadine for you, mate. No betadine for you. If you can't hold the rope properly, no sympathy at all.
You worked with both Eric and Elvis. Settle the score once and for all. Who is bigger?
This animal, I think, is bigger by around about 4 inches in the old language, so there's not much in it. This animal has 4 legs. Old Eric only had 3, of course. But the most significant thing is temperament and behaviour. Eric was a glove puppet compared to this animal. This croc would have eaten Eric for breakfast, absolutely. Working with Eric for many, many years, I probably had two times where I was actually very, very frightened. In the last 10 years of this animal, I've probably had 30 of those experiences. You can't take your eyes off him. He's very, very astute, and he's conniving, and he certainly plots, that is for sure.
I agree, and I often see people commenting on that Eric was bigger. What do you think in that regard?
No, this animal is fractionally larger. It's very hard to weigh these animals. You can measure their length fairly easily. When you've got him in a position where you're above him, you can pop a marker down at the snout and the tail, and then he walks off. You can measure the space in between. And he is fractionally larger than old Eric. Eric was a very old crocodile in his mid-60s when he passed, and he had a fairly tough life prior to arriving at the park. I have no doubt this animal will live into his 80s and 90s. He's very, very fit and relatively young. We think he's only just in his early 50s. So this animal hatched just about the time that protection was gazetted for crocodiles in Australia. Prior to that, it had been game on, and there was lots of recreational hunting and whatnot. Today, of course, they're a highly valuable species and highly beneficial to the ecosystem. They really, really are. And of course, they generate enormous millions in tourist dollars as well. People come from all over the world to see not just this animal, but crocodiles generally in Australia. They really are fabulous. And unfortunately, we almost lost them. There was unregulated hunting right through the 40s, 50s, 60s and into the early 70s, and they were almost gone. Now, luckily today they're making a bit of a comeback, and even though they're a very large, ferocious animal, they're actually a very, very simple animal to avoid. Crocodiles don't run over the land to grab you. It's in or close to the water, and if you're very, very careful in those areas, you've got very little to worry about with crocodile. Incidentally, statistically, quite a few crocodile attacks in Australia have involved alcohol and stupidity. So keep your wits about you, do the right thing. You've got really nothing to fear from this species.
What's their lifespan like?
In captivity, they live around about 80 and 90 years. Everybody's hoping to have one to live to 100. In the wild, we think their lifespan is around about 60 years or so. You've got good times, bad times, you've got illness, predatory threat, all that sort of stuff. But the most significant thing for a croc, if you're a hatchling, your chance, you're 20 centimetres in length, you weigh about 75 grams, your chances of turning into this are about 1 in 50,000. He really is an extraordinary animal.
Are they smart animals?
Yes, they certainly are. They're very astute. They're highly, their ability to observe the environment is extraordinary. They can stay focused on a problem. If it takes him 3 weeks to ambush a kangaroo, not a problem. He's not driven by hunger as such on a day-to-day basis. He can stay focused on that hunt, on that attack for 3 weeks. Now, I've got a lot of kelpies at home, and one of them can drive a car, but they can't stay focused on a single task for that long. And as I mentioned before, he observes all of the staff, he knows us all, and he behaves quite differently with different staff members as well. Jake, who's on the rope at the moment, invariably gets a very, very good feed response from Elvis. Sometimes he really behaves to me, sometimes he misbehaves, but when Jake feeds him, it usually goes fairly well.
And what's Jake doing right now by, moving the rope forward and back?
Basically, he's trying to stimulate the croc to sort of give us a little bit of action by moving that backwards and forwards. We're hoping that the croc might open his jaws for a better grip, or might just get a bit annoyed by Jake and decide to roll over a few times. Interesting thing though, I don't know whether you can see this at home, but the croc's eyes are actually on myself and Amanda, who's doing the filming for us today. He hasn't really been looking at the boys at all. The little pupil in his eye is directly towards us and has been the whole time. I think also one of the other things too is that he enjoys holding things in his jaws almost as much as swallowing them. Yeah, he really does. If it was really all about the food, you'd gobble down that piece as quickly as you possibly could, but he's really savouring the moment, I think.
And this is a very natural behaviour for him to grab an item and take it into the water?
Yes, very much so. They do eat a bit of carrion. If something's dead on the edge of the riverbank, they're quite amenable to wandering out and grabbing it and dragging it back in. But like most carnivores, a fresh kill is certainly more appealing. So I think they'd rather grab a wallaby off the edge of the riverbank rather than come out and pick away at a cow that's been there for a couple of weeks.
Do you know the bite force of Elvis and saltwater crocodiles?
It's around about 3,500 pounds per square inch. And I know I'm speaking imperial. To put that into perspective, if you've got all your teeth and a healthy jaw, you have around about 207 pounds per square inch of closing bite force. This animal has sufficient to fracture large bones.
And how large can saltwater crocodiles get?
Pardon me. On average, look, if you're a 4 metre croc, you'd be classified as a fairly large individual. This one's 4.5. I think the biggest one ever recorded is about 6 metres long. Now, of course, there's all sorts of ways of making crocodiles look larger with tricks of photography and whatnot. But really and truly, if you're this size, you can dominate your environment. You can kill a kangaroo, a human, a horse, a camel, a buffalo. You don't really need to be much larger than this. So this really is fabulous. In prehistoric times, when the food items were enormously larger, then crocodiles were bigger again, up to about the 25-foot mark in the old language. But this is sufficient to cope with just about anything. And as you can see, these 3 burly lads, they're having no impact when they're giving that rope a bit of a yank. Really and truly, he's just playing here. Really like a good workout at the gym for young Jake there, that is for sure.
So he did a bit of a tail whip then. How powerful are their tails and what are their uses in the wild?
Incredibly powerful. Look, he can knock you off your feet with the tail, no problems at all. The tail is the propulsion unit, or the power plant, if you like. When he moves through the water, it's the tail that's providing all of that forward thrust. So and on the land, it's a counterbalance as well. If he swings his head hard to the left, the tail will correspondingly come around to the right. So he can turn around practically on the spot. And as we're always reminding the younger staff, he can strike through his entire body length. So he's 5 metres long. That means effectively he can throw himself 5 metres sideways as well by spinning around. So you've really got to keep your wits about you with this animal. It's not so much the jaws all the time. If he knocks you off your feet, then he's got you, that's for sure. So you've got to watch the tail as well.
So we've gone through our 3rd rotation of the boys at the front, and Elvis is still winning.
Elvis is still winning. Yeah.
And how fast are they? And are they significantly faster in the water than on land?
Oh yes, they can move quite quickly through the water. They really can. How many knots, I really don't know. But he can certainly swim much faster than the average person can swim. On the land, they tend to be fairly cumbersome, particularly above 3 metres. And the reason for that, quite simply, is that they have short, stubby legs, which are on the side of the body. Now that means that you can change directions very effectively, but you don't run forwards very quickly. If you need to move forwards very fast, you tend to have legs underneath. So you're like a horse or a human. Legs on the side mean that your forte, or your skill, is changing direction very, very quickly. Now, when I was a kid, the old story was you're being chased by a croc, running in a zigzag. Forget that. You just run as fast as you possibly can. And you don't have to run that fast. A croc will run out of puff on the land very, very quickly. Excellent work. Now, what Zach's doing there is using fatness, and even that doesn't seem to be working today. Ooh. He's half thinking about it, I think.
Do it again next week.
Attempt number 3.
That's right. Join us next week. Crocodile Death Roll 3.0.
Use Ranger Mick.
Now we're about to end this stream in the next few minutes, guys. But I'm willing to bet money that 10 minutes after the stream is over, you'll be going over and over and over. Very, very good reminder to the staff that, look, if a tragedy occurs and he grabs somebody, it's not going to be a case of him biting and letting go. It'll be precisely like this. And while it's exciting to see, it's also a little bit nerve-wracking, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, we might do one big pull and then we might wrap it up there for today. We'll see if we can get the food back. Yeah. All right, let's go, boys.
Now, if we have a quick look at his front leg, he's not actually bracing against the edge of the pool. What he's doing is just using his body weight to just lie on the bottom. He's not actually resisting as such. When he is, he's got the front legs out against the edge of the pool. They're actually turned back at the moment, so he's quite literally just lying there.
The boys are determined, that's for sure.
At least his teeth look good.
His teeth look fantastic, don't they? Now, because he's on the rope, he won't let go. You can actually get a bit closer to that, Amanda, if you'd like to.
No, my dad's watching the stream. He won't let me.
Yeah. Any comments coming in? You should ask the general public, who'd like Amanda to actually get closer to the crocodile?
All right, guys. Well, look, we've done our best today, and as I mentioned at the onset, you can never quite tell what these animals are going to do. It really is like a box of chocolates, so to speak. So maybe what we might try and do, we might have yet another go next Wednesday. We'll see how we go. Now tomorrow, what we're doing in live stream is far more reliable. We're going to milk some snakes. We're going to have a look at some things that are deadly and dangerous, and they always behave. So that's tomorrow. Join us at 2 o'clock sharp. But right now, from all of us here at the Reptile Park, we do hope you had a bit of fun, and we hope you're enjoying these streams. And look, we are so desperate to have you come and visit us here at the park. So hop onto the website, virtual tours, virtual animal adoptions. Have a look at that. All sorts of fantastic stuff. And we want to welcome you all back to the park physically as soon as we possibly can. I'm Ranger Mick. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.